Shalom, shalom. Hello, those joining us on Zoom and in person. Even in January we start to learn Torah. So, what the Gezerah came out against plastics. Okay. I guess we can start. Hello, Jeff. Hello, it's two Jeffs. That's what I used. Two Jeffs. Virtual Jeff and in-person Jeff. Okay. So we are going to start chapter 7 on page 271. Nice new chapter for post-summer. I hope everyone's having a good summer. Not too hot. Yeah. Okay. Just okay. All right. So we're on page 271. I'm just going to share screen. It's good to be back. I said even in January we learned Torah. I know everything else is closed. Okay. Page 271. You did miss a bit. 271. We're about to start Chazarat Hashatz. We finished looking at the silent Amida, and now we're into Chazarat Hashatz. Okay. Good timing. Okay. So we spoke briefly in the past about exactly what the purpose of Chazarat Hashatz is, but there's a machloket here, which we're just going to read the Beit Yosef's summary because that's what they brought us here in the book. There's a machloket between the Chacham and Rambam Gamliel as to who can rely on Chazarat Hashatz. We know traditionally the idea of the repetition, the Chazarat Hashatz, was to be motzi people discharge the obligation for those who couldn't read or couldn't say the word themselves. The question is, what happens if somebody else wants to, a bit lazy or whatever, had somebody this week had their wisdom teeth out. They don't want to daven. They want to just hear, they want to just hear from the Shliach Tzibur. Is it a special dispensation of people who can't read, or can anyone rely on it? And this is a machloket between Rambam Gamliel and the Chachamim. Now, ultimately, we do paskin like the Chachamim, and we only rely on Rambam Gamliel on Rosh Hashanah. And most of on Rosh Hashanah, because the davening is so long, it's the three brachot in the middle of Malchiot, Zichronot, and Shofarot. And similarly also in the Yovel year, because in the Yovel year on Yom Kippur, they'd also do Malchiot, Zichronot, and Shofarot on Yom Kippur, as well as Rosh Hashanah. But otherwise we pass Galai Chachamim. So the Beit Yosef summarizes this sugya of Rosh Hashanah here in source 1. Yes, on the preamble, yeah.
If it was for the people who couldn't read or follow, if you could read or follow, does that mean that would that have then exempted you from having to listen to it because you could read or follow?
Or better still, nowadays, if you're in a shul where theoretically everyone says the davening, then do you even need Chazarat Hashatz? So there are other purposes to it as well. We'll discuss it. So let's have a look at the sorry. So there's never just one simple answer in any shir. Otherwise, that'll be it. Go home. So let's have a look at the Beit Yosef summary here in source 1 on page 271. So Beit Yosef says, after the community finished the Amida, yachzir shliach tzibur hatfilah, then the repetition. Besof Rosh Hashanah Tanam, we learn in the Mishnah. Kashem shliach tzibur chayav kol kach kol yachid v'yachid chayav. So Chachamim say that everyone is obligated. Everyone is obligated in Amida. Rambam Gamliel omer shliach tzibur motzi et harabim yudei chobatam. Rambam Gamliel says that the shliach tzibur can just read the repetition for everyone. In fact, it wouldn't be called repetition. He could just do the out loud Amida for everyone. And the Gemara there discusses it. Amar Rambam Gamliel, yeah, it is repetition. That's true, right? But the Gemara says, Amar Rambam Gamliel. Rambam Gamliel asked the Chachamim, according to you, lama shliach tzibur yored. You say that what's the point in having a chazan if everyone has to do their own Amida anyway? Amrullah, the Chachamim responded to him, Kadei lahotzi et she'eno baki, for those who don't know how to daven. So he can fulfill the obligation for them. That's the purpose of the repetition. Amar lahem, Rambam Gamliel said back to them, Shem shemotzi et she'eno baki, kach motzi et she'hu baki. If he's anyway allowed to be, what is this chatshi shiur, this half cut job? If it works to be motzi those who don't know how to read, then it can also, in theory, work to be motzi those who do know how to read. But ultimately, we don't paskin that way. Only on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur of Yovel. So, ba'asikna de halacha karam Gamliel b'brachot shel Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim. Av b'bracha shel Shayim Ot Hashanah halacha kachachamim. So fundamentally, Paskin like Chachamim, the only people who don't know how to daven can rely on the repetition to be their Amida. Well, Mashma Divrei Rabbeinu, the implication from the words of the Torah, says the Beit Yosef is the she'ena baki, somebody who, what does it mean? Somebody who's not an expert, doesn't know. Hainu, this means she'en yodeh hits palel. They don't know how to daven, so they don't speak fluent Hebrew. But nonetheless, mevin hu masha shliach tzibur omer. That's a chiddush of the Beit Yosef, that if you want to rely on the repetition, you have to understand the brachot. It's interesting because, you think of people, if they can't read Hebrew, then they probably, all the more so, don't understand what the brachot means. So it's kind of, at least in our society where Hebrew's not our mother tongue, it's kind of counterintuitive. But this is what he says. He says, at the top of the next page, he doesn't understand what the chazan is saying, then you can't fulfill the obligation by listening to him and saying Amen. I would say that maybe it doesn't necessarily mean word for word, but you have to have the general idea and know when to answer Amen and the like. Because otherwise, it's quite difficult to find somebody who's unable to recite the Amida because they're not fluent enough, but they do speak it. Especially in modern times when we all read and write, it's difficult to sort of think of that somebody who's like that. But that's what the Shulchan Aruch nonetheless rules. And lahalacha, he paskins this way, that only those who don't really know how to daven rely on the repetition. So in source 2, the Shulchan Aruch says, once everyone's done their silent Amida, then the chazan repeats. Why? Because that way, if there's somebody in the crowd who doesn't know how to daven, he just has in mind lemashu omer, to what the chazan is saying. And fulfills obligations through the repetition. But that person has to have kavana and at least think about the kol mashu omer shliach tzibur mirosh v'ad. He has to follow along basically and answering amen to each bracha from beginning to end, in order for it to count as his own Amida as well.
Thought that, sometimes like popular songs, people know, so they hear it over and over again, so they know they mimic it, they can sing it off by heart. They might be able to read music or be able to see it. But so someone who may be familiar with davening, they hear it time and time again, could repeat what the shliach tzibur is, having heard it, can mimic it, can read it, so can say it, but wouldn't be able to read it. So therefore, how does that apply to davening? If you're hearing it by rote, you're saying it by rote as opposed to reading, you're saying the words, you actually haven't.
I think it's also important to realize that the sort of person we might be talking about is that not everyone had a siddur in those days. The assumption is most people don't, and then you're Baal Peh. Now, you might have known enough Hebrew to understand basically the gist of the tefillah, but you couldn't, not commit it to memory yourself, word for word. And that's the sort of person that really I think Shulchan Aruch is really talking about. That you've got to have kavanah, but you might have the confidence to know the whole thing beginning to end by heart. So you have to listen. You understand enough basic Hebrew to understand the gist of the Amida, but you don't have enough confidence to say it yourself with no siddur. Sorry? Right. But there are so many halachot today, I've mentioned in the past, which are based on that. We saw previously the idea of tircha de tzibura, of bothering other people by davening too loudly and things, doesn't necessarily apply on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Why? Because in those days, everyone had a siddur Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So everyone had a machzor, a special machzor, because it's got a different filler. So you didn't know it by heart. So during the rest of the year, everyone's davening by heart. So if somebody's davening loudly next to you, it bothers you. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, if they're davening really loudly with kavanah, and it doesn't bother you in the same way because you're not going to lose your place because you're reading it. So there are actually halachot which made its way into Jewish history, into halachic history, because of the fact people didn't have a siddur throughout the year. And I think that's really the sort of person Shulchan Aruch was talking about. So what about nowadays then? Sorry?
It's just making think that when I set up to form late for Mincha on Friday, and I'm saying Mincha during the repetition from the Shliach Tzibur, if he's quiet, I'm usually racing ahead, and then when he starts getting loud, I have to open the siddur.
It's hard to daven in parallel to the
I have to open the siddur to find
yes,
my words.
but that's exactly what Chazal are talking about. So what about in a community or nowadays where we have siddurim and people all are literate? What is the point of having Chazarat Hashatz? So there, as you alluded to, Michael, there are other purposes of the repetition as well. So the Piskei Teshuvot lists a couple of them. Here in source 3. And then we're going to look at the Soloveitchik's whole idea, which I really like. So let's have a look in source 3 first, the Piskei Teshuvot. Anshe Knesset HaGadola shetiknu Chazarat Hashatz gam kedei lomar kedusha. Another reason that they enacted the repetition it gives us an opportunity to recite Kedusha. L'kayim mitzvah, to fulfill the mitzvah of v'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael. V'gam kedei la'anot modim, and also to answer modim as a community, sheish b'zeh mitzvah. When the entire community all bow in unison to modim, that's also a special moment. So there are special highlights, if you like, important moments of the repetition beyond just as a special convenience to help people who can't daven. The odd time now, another reason to say the repetition. I feel bisman hazeh, even nowadays, shekulam bekim hitpalel, when everyone knows how to daven, is another reason is ki matzoi she'ein mechaven. Great answer, good musa for us. Ki matzoi she'ein mechavnim b'tefillah. Often, the first time round when we do our silent Amida, says the Piskei Tshuva, people don't have enough the right kavanah for tefillah. The ikka tefillah hi kavanat halev, and you've got to have kavanah in your heart. Or befrat the bracha birkat avot, especially in the first bracha of avot, shah kavanah le'ikuva. Well, if you don't have kavanah, we know in the first bracha, then your Amida doesn't work. V'yichol right? Avatato al yedei shmi'at chazarat hashatz b'chavanah. That you can basically fix your error, fix your mistake by hearing the repetition. So nowadays, somebody who doesn't have kavanah during avot can, by having a kavanah and repetition, could work. Yes, Peter. You're on mute. Still on mute.
I'm mute. The first point about Kedusha, I understood that Kedusha every day is a fairly late innovation, and probably not until the times of the Geonim was Kedusha said every day.
Right.
And the other thing about the kavanah, if you don't have kavanah when you're saying it yourself, why are you going to have kavanah when someone else is saying it?
This is true. I think it's not that saying you're going to necessarily, but it's a second chance. Meaning the Ramah paskins that nowadays, if you don't have kavanah the first time round, don't bother repeating, because who says, it's quite sad, Ramah that we read previously, who says you're going to have any better kavanah the second time round? And every time you're risking another bracha levatala, another bracha levatala. But when Chazal enact one person for the community and you to say it, then there's less of a concern because it's everyone listening to that one person. So in contrast to the Ramah saying don't bother, when it's Chazal are enacting it's like an extra chance, I suppose, if you like. But you're right about, I also was wondering about the Kedusha thing, because the Kedusha you're right, that the formal Kedusha as we know it is from the Gaonic period. It's not from
the other thing.
Kedusha is not mentioned. There is a concept of Kedusha, but not in the formal Nekadesh at Shimcha. That text is from the Gaonim. Not, it doesn't.
And I think didn't Harambam say also that if he would have had his way, he would have abolished Chazarat Hashatz, because he says no one's listening, everyone's talking, no one's paying attention. It's a bit of a game.
Are you talking about Rambam with his as Mishnah Torah hat on, or his Moreh Nevuchim hat?
I think I'm not sure which one, but I know.
I'm trying to remember if he says that in Mishnah Torah, because in Mishnah Torah he's very clear about the importance of tefillah. I can't remember if he discusses Chazarat Hashatz in that way. Yes.
So did he daven in the shul in Alexandria when he was?
No, he was in Postas.
Okay, I'm just thinking.
In Alexandria, you couldn't hear anything; it was so big.
That's why I'm saying it.
So you could hear that, yeah.
You can't hear it.
But there are lots of things the Rambam would have, if he had his way, would have cancelled, starting with the Gemara, because his book replaced it. But that's for a different shiur. Okay. Oh, good. We're outnumbering ourselves now in the room over Zoom. It's good. Okay. So I'll use this as a segue to say I have high hopes for 2023 that I could abolish Zoom, but if I abolish Zoom, I have a feeling I might lose a few of you. Is that a fair assumption? Sorry, after the holidays. I'm going to still give my sort of monthly threat to abolish Zoom in the hope that it will bring people back. Okay, so we're just on page 273. So we said, okay, so there are other purposes to Chazarat Hashatz, not just because it is there to help people who can't read, who can't recite the Amida on their own, but it contains other ideas, which the Piskei Shiva said about Kedusha Modim. Although Peter is correct, the formal Kedusha text only came at the time of the Gaonim. It could be, though, Peter, that once, nowadays, post-Gaonic period, there is now a purpose to recite Chazarat Hashatz still, and there's no reason to abolish it because you've now got the Kedusha. But you're right, the Anshe Knesset Hagadola at the beginning of Bayit Sheni, if they instituted Chazarat Hashatz, they were not including Kedusha in it. They did it for the primary reason to be mostly those who cannot read. But nowadays it has Kedusha, so that's an extra reason to keep it, even if everyone can read. But the Rav, Soloveitchik, has a wonderful mahalach, which I really enjoy, and will give me a chance to talk about some nice gush chumras, which are not in the book. In source 4 here, in the Igrot HaGrid, there's another purpose of, which I've mentioned before. Chazarat Hashatz is not just another opportunity of tefillah b'tzibur, or to be motzi those who cannot, but it's tefillat hatzibur. It is the tefillah of the community. And the same way that everyone does their own Amida privately, the repetition is not just a repetition, it is the communal prayer. It is on behalf of the entire congregation. Even though the chazan is the one saying the words, it is on behalf of the entire community as a whole, as a collective. So let's have a look at the Rav's words inside here in source 4. Says Rav Soloveitchik, V'din Amida v'aniyat amen, hu midin shel tefillah. You have to answer amen and listen to the repetition, not because it's a bracha you have to answer amen to and hear another, but because it is your tefillah. It is the tefillah of the shliach tzibur. We have to we have to fulfill our obligation of the shliach tzibur's repetition. But it's clear that even those who've already davened silently, right? If you daven in private amida, you still have to answer amen. So that's a proof, says the Rav. If you have to answer amen still, you're chayav to listen quietly, not just for decorum purposes, because you have to actually fulfill your obligation in the repetition, even if you already davened the silent amida. There's an obligation on the entire community to hear the repetition, even if you've already davened. And that, what's the reason? It's mishum de etzem tefillat shliach tzibur chala lagabe kol hatzibur. Chazarat hashatz is an obligation on the entire shul. Shezoi etzem takanat chazarat tefillah. It's a repetition for the entire community. Delo rak shliach tzibur mitpalel ela de kol hatzibur mitpalelim. Says the Rav, something fascinating, right? Even though he's the one saying the words, it's shomer ka'oneh, basically. You are fulfilling your obligation. He is just the same way that, so the person laying shomer ka'oneh, he's doing it on behalf of everyone, but everyone is davening the repetition, not just the chazan. And that's why you have to be careful to answer amen. And he explains, Ki yesh shtei chalotei shem shel tefillah ne'amru b'tzibur. There are two categories, chalot shem, calls them, two categories of tefillah in a community. Firstly, tefillah b'lachash, silent amida, u tefillah b'kol ram shesliach tzibur. And there's a second tefillah which we all have to do, which is recited by the tefillah of the chazan, and that's all answering amen. Ushteihem heimakiyamei kol tzibur. They're both fulfilled by the entire community. So says the Rav, says Soloveitchik, the entire community is really davening the repetition. It's on behalf of everyone. Everyone does their private, personal amida, and then the community davens a communal tefillah. The chazan is the one saying the words, and we answer amen. This led to a few chumras. So Rav Soloveitchik used to not answer Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo. He would just answer amen, because you're being yotzei yedei chovah. If you're fulfilling your obligation, you don't say Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo. And if you're saying a bracha on behalf, Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo is when someone else is saying their own private bracha. So the Rav and also a lot of the Gush Rabbanim, Rav Aaron Zatzal, Moshe Lichtenstein, Rabbi Shlita, they don't say Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo. They just say amen to each bracha. They won't, because they're fulfilling their obligation now when they hear the chazan. They say amen to every bracha without Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo. A second one is the Rav would stand for Chazarat Hashatz with his feet together, like it's the Amida, like a silent. It is the Amida. It's the Amida of the Tzibur. And therefore, he would stand with his feet together, because he's in Amida now of the Tzibur. And then and Rav Moshe does this. Rav Aaron Zatzal did it. I used to watch him all the time. They stand there like it's the Amida, feet together. It's fascinating. Yes, Dr. Wien. You're on mute again.
Although he was a Levi, he would also not wash Kohanim.
Yes.
He would not go out to wash the Kohanim's hands because he was standing.
Rav Soloveitchik took it so far that he would not leave to go wash the Kohanim's hands, even though he was a Levi.
I think
he also, while you've mentioned that, he had a strong preference, because Malchiyot, Zichronot, and Shofrot on Rosh Hashanah was a big deal. Because why do we blow the shofar Malchiyot, Zichronot, and Shofrot? According to the Rav, it's not just a repetition; it's the tefillah of the tzibur. So he really wanted to wait, although it never worked in YU, or in Boston, I think. He really wanted to wait for everyone to finish. In theory, it works nice in theory, but it never practically done. He wanted to wait for the whole community to finish their Amida, and only then start the repetition on Musaf on Rosh Hashanah. so that the shofar blasts, which are on behalf of the tefillah tzibur of the whole community, because in theory that's what should happen. I've never seen this, and even in the Gush, they never waited for Rav Aaron necessarily on Rosh Hashanah, but otherwise it would have been
I think
it's already finished at 2:00 as it was. I don't think on Rosh Hashanah. I don't think we needed to wait.
I think
but in
Rav
theory,
also
that was
had
what they would have wanted to do. Sorry.
He also had this thing about he had a distinction between Tfilat Hatzibur and Tfilat Bat Zibur, like a
So that's what I
typical
was saying. So
Brisker
this is not
distinction.
just Tfilat B'tzibur, this is Tfilat Hatzibur. This is the communal prayer, which is the words are being recited by the Chazan, but it's everyone's tefillah. And that's why
And
you
I
have to
think
answer Amen to every bracha carefully.
The other reason I've heard about for not saying Baruch Hu Baruch Shmo is because it's not mentioned in the Gemara to say that, whereas to say Amen is, and therefore because it's your tefillah that is making it, you're making a hefsek when you say Baruch Hu Baruch Shmo, you're interrupting.
It could be. I haven't heard that reason specifically. I've heard it could be that. I heard more the other reason, which is we don't say Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo for brachas when you're actually being yotze. And fundamentally, the Rav Soloveitchik held you are being yotze when you hear the repetition. So this is some serious mussar for us, just in terms of the nature of repetition. It's not just another option B for those who can't daven, but it was actually tefillah of the tzibur, and that was the chiddush of Rav Soloveitchik. Okay. There are some Kabbalistic reasons which the Kaf HaChaim touches upon here in source 5 about the important. We touched upon this in the past. I think at the end of last year we spoke about that in Kabbalah, and as you can tell, I'm a real Kabbalist. But in Kabbalah, there's this idea that in some sense the repetition is even more important than the silent Amida, which I think is what Soloveitchik was saying in just rationalistic terms rather than Kabbalistic terms. But the Mekubalim put a Kabbalistic spin on it, on the importance of Chazarat HaShatz. If you look in source 5, it's also one of the reasons that Rav Avadia went crazy, has a long tshuva in Chavedat, relatively long in Chavedat, where he attacks places where they do the quick mincha, the Hechei Kedusha, which we discussed, because he says, what about Chazarat HaShatz? And the Kabbalists spoke about the importance of repetition. It's even more important than the silent Amida, perhaps. So the Kaf HaChaim quotes it here, source 5. Zeh lefi pshat. V'yadun, it's known, shekol divrei Razal, all the words of Chazal, afal pi sheyesh b'hem sodot niflaim, ein magalim otan. You don't know the reasons, says the Kaf HaChaim, for all of the enactments of Chazal. That you don't know every reason why they enacted the repetition. They only give you a simple reason. It's to be yotzi those who don't know how to daven. So the Arizal knew the Kabbalistic reasons as well as the centrality and the importance of Chazarat HaShatz. Okay, Ushnayim Chova. That they're both. Maybe it should be Shnehem, but they're both the Chova. So the Arizal actually held as a Mekubal that the repetition was more important than the silent Amida. That's why he says in Shah Kavanot of the Arizal, the Chazarat HaAmida about the importance of the repetition. So the Arizal spoke at length about this. And therefore, the Kaf HaChaim explains the practice of the Arizal was Ha'arizal b'chazarat hashatz hayotzem einav. So the Arizal would close his eyes during the repetition, v'shomea and listen, or mitzkaven divrei hashatz, and hear and have in mind to fulfill every word of the chazan. V'lachen en levatel chazara b'shum pam. That's why we should never cancel Chazarat HaShatz, and why the Mekubalim are so against the idea of the Hechei Kedusha, which we discussed in the past. Shachrit u'musaf u'mincha. Ela dafka b'makom de'ikar ones. Only when there's absolute, time of great stress. V'chein katav ben Ish Chai. So the Mekubalim were very insistent about the inherent Kabbalistic importance of the repetition. Okay, so it's more than just a option B for those who can't daven. There's fundamental importance there. So that's about Chazarat HaShatz as a whole. If we go over to page 275, what about the Kedusha itself? So as Peter pointed out, the text that we have of our Kedusha is from the times of the Gaoni. It's not mentioned in the Gemara. But what about the different nusachim that we Ashkenazim, other than Musaf, we say Nekadesh et Shimcha Ba'olam, whereas those who Eidat HaMizrach and also Nusach Sfarad, they say Musaf they say Keter, but they say Nat Dishach v'Naritzach. So the Tur, who was a hybrid Ashkenazi Sephardi because his father was the Rosh, brings both minhagim in source 6 here on page 275. Says the Tur. After finishing the second bracha, namely Machayim Hameitim, Yomar, one should say Nakdishach v'naritzach v'chulei v'ya'anu acharei kedusha, and the community should respond with the kedusha. V'omrim ba'Ashkenaz nusach acher. Okay, v'omrim b'nusach Ashkenaz nusach acher. In Ashkenaz they said a different bracha. V'zehu, the nusach in Ashkenaz as we know is Mekadesh Shimcha ba'olam. Or he has a slightly different nusach, but olamcha, kashem shemak tishim motobesh meim arom, v'chen katuv al yan neviecha. The karazel zev amar, v'yesh ba yud dalet tevot. If you take the Torah's nusach, it works out that the phrase nekadesh has 14 words. Kamoshesh b'pasuk b'karazel zeh, akin to the pasuk which you read afterwards, b'karazel zev amar. We have 13 words because we don't say v'chen katuv, we say kakatuv al yan neviecha. But the Torah brings both minhagim as his introduction, that introductory phrase of the Kedusha. Okay, who is supposed to recite the Kadesh at Shimcha? We know that a contemporary practice is that the Chazan says Mechai Hameitim, and we all say Amen, and then we all say silently the Kadesh at Shimcha, and the Chazan repeats it. But that is not clear cut in the poskim at all. It's brought in the later poskim, and we'll explain how we get there. But that's not brought by everybody. In fact, if we look in the Tur, what did the Tur say? The Tur says who should say the line Nakdishach v'naritzach. Yomar, the Chazan should say Nakdishach v'naritzach. V'ya'anu acharav kedusha. We, the community, are only supposed to join in at kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. Right? The implication is that we're not supposed to say the line the Kadesh Shimcha. Only the Chazan is, and that's what the Beit Yosef says is implied from the Torah. If you look at source 7, it says the Beit Yosef there. It seems from the words of the Torah, she'ein hatzibur omrim im Chazan Nakdishach. We are not supposed to say the words Nekadesh Shimcha ba'olam. Only the Chazan is supposed to say that. Ella, rather, shotkin. We, the community, is supposed to be silent. Listening to the Chazan saying Nekadesh Shimcha ba'olam. And only when he gets up to Kadosh, 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 as Ya'anu v'yom Kadosh. So this is what the Beit Yosef says really is the correct minhag to do. We're not supposed to say Nekadesh Shimcha. Only the Chazan is, and we only join in at Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. And the Rosh goes further, and he also explains that it's just like Kaddish. The same way that you don't say Yikadav Yikadash with the Kaddish, you only, when do we join in Kaddish? We say Amen. But we join the primary line of Kaddish is when the Chazan says V'imru Amen, then we will say Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah. The Rosh says the same thing is true with Kedusha. We're not supposed to say the Kadesh Shimcha according to the Rosh and the Torah. We look at source 8, he says this in the Tzurba quite clearly. V'gam davar pashatu, it's obvious, says the Rosh. She'ein lomar Kaddish im Chazan. You're not supposed to say Kaddish along with the Chazan. Ki ein omrim Kaddish ela ba'asara. You're only supposed to say Kaddish the presence of 10, and there's supposed to be one representative and everyone else listening. But tzarich lahavin lechazan, you have to listen to the Chazan. V'la'anot Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah. Komo came to Kedusha, and it's the same in Kedusha. Omer ha'chazan nakdishach v'naritzach ad shemigila kadosh. Only the Chazan says the opening line of Kedusha. V'az onim hatzibur kadosh, and the community only join in at kadosh. So don't worry though, it's not only just this Rosh and the Torah say, the Shulchan Aruch actually says this explicitly. Even though we have a different minhag, Shulchan Aruch says we're not supposed to say Nekadesh Shimcha or Nakdishach. If we look in source 9, the Shulchan Aruch rules this way. Ein hatzibur omrim im hashatz Nakdishach. You're not supposed to say Nakdishach with the Chazan. Ella, rather, shotkin, we're supposed to stand there in silence. Machavnim l'mashu shliach tzibur omer ad shemigila kedusha. And listen to what the Chazan says until he reaches the Kedusha. And then we join in with Kadosh. So the Rosh said this, the Torah said this, Shulchan Aruch said this. The Gra, the Vilna Gaon actually ruled this way, and the Gra held this way, la halacha, like the Shulchan Aruch does, that, and therefore those who follow Minhag HaGra will not say the line Nekadesh Shimcha ba'olam. They'll stand there silently, and only the Chazan will say it. We look at the Mishnah Berurah. He says though that the Minhag is not this way. However, even the Mishnah Berurah says maybe the real minhag, the correct minhag is like the Shulchan Aruch and the Gra say, that we're not supposed to say Nekadesh Shimcha. Let's have a look at the Mishnah Berurah here in source 10. It says the Mishnah Berurah, source 10. V'yesh makilin sheyuchal lomar im hashatz. So those are lenient and allow one to say the line Nekadesh with the Chazan. V'haminhag nachon kamo shekarav Shulchan Aruch. But the correct minhag is not to do this, but rather to be silent. Why? Because that's what the Achronim ruled, and the Gra also ruled that way. Nonetheless, the Mishnah concedes the minhag is that we all say the Kadesh. And this is also the minhag of Sfardim as well. Even though the Shulchan Aruch ruled this way, the minhag of the Sfardim is that they all say Naktishach together. They don't say Nakadesh, they say Naktishach, but they all say it together, which is interesting that the Sfardim, especially those of Mishpachat Yosef, would say this blatantly against Shulchan Aruch. Because we know they always follow Maran, unless one of the shikulim, one of the halachic factors when even Rav Ovadia and his family don't follow the Shulchan Aruch, is when there's already a pre-existing minhag otherwise. So this is what he says in source 11, the Alpha Yosef. That which everyone says that line together. It has what to rely on, even though Shulchan Aruch didn't rule that way. And that is basically the default practice, the default minhag, says the Yalkut Yosef. So even though it's against the Shulchan Aruch. Okay. He goes on and he says that this is implied from elsewhere. Remember, we spoke about somebody who comes late to shul. Somebody who comes late to shul, they start their Amidah maybe with the Chazan, and then they say the words Nekadesh Shimcha with him, word by word. That's what the Shulchan Aruch ruled there. So it says the Yalkut Yosef, you see from there that even the Shulchan Aruch himself entertain the possibility that people do say Nekadesh or Naktishach if you're Sfaradi along with the Chazan. Like we learned about somebody who comes late to shul, that they say Nekadesh Shimcha word for word with the Chazan. So this is what he says in source 12, the continuation there, that even the Shulchan Aruch is not really consistent on this, and therefore those who want to continue like our minhag, that everyone says Nekadesh Shimcha, that's fine, even though the Shulchan Aruch ruled otherwise. Well, certainly by that. The question is that even those who are on time, do you say Nekadesh or not? The Gra said not to say it, the Shulchan Aruch said not to say it. The prevailing minhag is that we do say it though. And we'll see Rav Moshe Feinstein talks about that in a minute as well. But let's just have a look at in source 12 here, the continuing words of the Yalkut Yosef says there, the Yalkut Yosef in source 12. The Shulchan Aruch himself wrote elsewhere. If you come late to shul and you start with the repetition, like we said in a previous shir, that you say for it word for word, so that's what he says. We're not going to read the whole thing inside, but that's essentially what he says, and therefore he says those who want to continue with this minhag, it has what to rely on, even though the Shulchan Aruch did not rule that way. Okay, let's look over the page. So we basically have two practices. There's the practice that we don't say anything. We answer Amen, and then we stand there in silence, and only the Chazan says Nekadesh Shimcha Ba'olam, and we only join in at Kadosh Kadosh. And then there's the other minhag which the Yalkut Yosef brought, which seems to the Mishnah also said was a minhag at the time, which is that everybody says together Nekadesh Shimcha. Rav Moshe Feinstein, the Igrat Moshe, brings option 3, which is basically what we do, which is that after Mechai HaMeitim, the Chazan should wait. We should also all together say Nekadesh Shimcha, and then the Chazan repeats Nekadesh Shimcha afterwards. Why does he do that? Explains Rav Moshe Feinstein, because there might be some people who are still in their Amidah. And because of Shemar Ka'oneh, they also have to say the line of Nekadesh Shimcha. And therefore, it's important that they hear the words of the Chazan Nekadesh Shimcha. So therefore, the practice is, says Rav Moshe Feinstein, everyone says Nekadesh Shimcha, and then when everyone's gone silent, then the Chazan should say again Nekadesh et Shimcha loudly. This also means, which not everyone does, according to this understanding of Moshe Feinstein, that really what should happen is the Chazan needs to make sure that he says the line Nekadesh et Shimcha word for word aloud, not just to pick up at Kakatuv. Sometimes you hear people, they just pick up at Kakatuv and Bakarazet, and they also say the first bit. But according to Moshe Feinstein, at least, the Chazan should wait, and then the whole line they should say out loud, so that those who are still in their Amidah can fulfill their obligation of Kedusha through Shemar Ka'oneh. Let's see this inside, in source 13. It says the Igrat Moshe, somebody who's still davening their Amidah should certainly stop. They have to be silent. The person still davening has to be able to hear. When the Chazan himself davens, the Trey Kali Lo Mishtamai, the halachic principle that two people talking at the same time, you can't halakhically hear them because the two voices get jumbled up. Especially when everyone's saying the Kadesh all at one go. And therefore, the Chazan has to say the whole thing aloud after everyone else has already said it. So those who are still in their private Amida should hear this. I'm not going to read the rest inside, but he goes further to say that even if the Chazan doesn't have Kavana, that by saying the Kadesh out loud word for word, that he's fulfilling the obligation for those who are still in their davening, nonetheless, it does work because it was instituted for this purpose. Yes, Peter. You're still on Zoom. You're still on mute.
Yeah. And that also applies for the rest of the Kedusha also. So it's not just the first line, that's the whole of the Kedusha that the Shatz has to say it out loud. And it also means that what happens, especially on Shabbat, is very bad. That when the Chazan is doing it more musically and people start singing along with him, they are invalidating what the Chazan is doing, because now we have a jumble of voices. You don't hear the Chazan as a single voice. So we should never sing along with the Chazan.
No, so according to Rav Moshe, so for example, let's say the Chazan starts a nice tune for, Shema, Yisrael. You shouldn't join in as a community until he gets to Hu Elokeinu. You should let him, Nebuch, sing on his own that line Shema Yisrael all by himself. And if he hasn't got a good voice, he shouldn't have picked that tune. He could have just said it. But you're right. The lines Kadosh Kadosh Baruch Kabod Shema and Musaf Shema Yisrael, the Chazan is supposed to say on their own without the community all joining in. You join in when he gets to the next bit, Hu Elokeinu or Kavodo or whatever it is, but not at those lines. Those lines are deliberately for him to say after everyone else.
And all of this is purely for the purpose for those people who are still be'emsat tefillah.
Yeah. Exactly.
What we often make sure, which is very annoying, is the people should either sing along with the tzibur or they la la la. Yes, that's what he's trying to say. The word, so you don't actually. Yeah.
It's even worse. The people who know that they shouldn't say Shema Yisrael again, so they just they do la 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 la.
Yeah, but even after the Shema Yisrael, so the next part.
I'll tell you the next bit, the whole Hu Elokeinu or Kavod Olam, the extended bits that we have, they're basically piyutim. They're not inherent parts of the Kedusha. The inherent part of Kedusha is the introductory line in the Kadesh, and then the psukim of Kadosh Kadosh, Baruch Kavod, and Yimloch. And also we have minhag of saying Shema Yisrael as well. That's the inherent Kedusha. The bit, the Kvod Omer Olam or Az B'Kol Rash Gadol Shacharit, those are piyutim basically. So even the Gra maybe would concede that you would say those because they're piyut. The Gra typically would say that you don't say, like, for example, according to the Gra, you shouldn't say Lu'umatam Baruch Yomei or Lu'umatam Baruch Yomeru and of Divrei Kodesh Katuv Lemar, right? Those you shouldn't say according to the Gra. Because it's not relevant for you to say them.
How does one deal with a shliach tzibur or a chazan who immediately just takes off without giving the kahal the time to actually recite anything at all?
You tell him off after davening. That's what seems to be the minhag.
Okay, yeah, I want to clarify that. Okay, fine. I don't.
And you blame the Rosh Kolal. So that's not on you.
Excellent. That's excellent.
Well, good.
Right.
Okay. Beseder. Okay, so let's have a look at the next section. Yes.
It's like when the Shlech Tzibur starts before davening's supposed to start. It's the same problem.
Very good. Okay.
What I'm saying.
Okay. So let's have a look at what about somebody who davens of Sfard and they're in a shul where they daven of Ashkenaz or vice versa. What should they recite when they say the lines of Kedusha? So the Egros Moshe, Ramosh Vashi talks about this now in source 14. So let's have a look here inside here. Okay, in source 14, top of page 279. Says Ramosh Feinstein. Hine, I actually got asked this week. Hine b'davar echad shehit mitpalel beit knesset. So a person who's davening in a shul, she'at sibur mitpalim b'nusach acher b'kfi shu mitpalel. So you're davening in a community which is a different nusach to your own private nusach. Hanachon la'ani da'ati. My humble opinion is shebedvarim shetzarich davka b'tzibur, things which are dependent on the tzibur, kamo kedusha, muchrach loma hanusach shel hatzibur. You're supposed to say the community that you're davening in. In other words, Kaddish or Kedusha when in Rome. Okay, when in Rome. I have to. I'll tell a story about this in a minute when we finish the Igrot Moshe. And even when you, even if you're going to say it quietly, so you're Sfarad and you want to say Keter at Musaf on Shabbos, no, even if you're going to whisper Keter, you really shouldn't do this as Rav Moshe Feinstein. You should be saying it with whatever the minhag of the shul that you're in is. Because the only reason you're able to recite the Kedusha now is because you're in a minyan. So how can you recite a minyan, a different minhag to the machayev, or the, I wouldn't even say the machayev, the matir, the thing which is allowing you to recite Kedusha is your participation in this minyan of people. So how could you possibly recite anything different to the minyan, because it's only your association with that minyan which is allowing you to say Kedusha. Right? That's what he says. It's a brilliant argument. He says the kol ha'amira asayat sibush hu ba'atzmo lo yachol lomar klal. The ein omrim kedusha b'yachid. You can't say kedusha on your own. So somebody asked me, and that's exactly what I told them, that when it comes to kedusha, you should say when in Rome, okay, or when in Mizrachi. And it gets particularly challenging in places in Israel where there's many shuls are in the Gush. I was there for a decade, and you never know who's going to get up from the Amud. The minhag of the shul is the minhag of the tefillah in many yeshivot in Israel, but certainly in the Gush is that whoever it's up to the chazan. So you can have a Ashkenaz, you have an Ashkenaz shacharit and a Sfarad mincha, So I heard that used to be the minhag here. So you could be doing the Kadesh shacharit and not the shachat it's a mincha, and it's interesting. So you sort of have to try and remember which chazan it is as to what it's kind of roulette, yeah.
So Rabbi, sorry.
But it's still mutter to daven your own personal tefillah. For example, I daven in a Gerish Dibble, so I daven Ashkenaz, even though my grandchildren and the son daven Nusach Sval. So I can still daven that. It's only the things like Kaddish we have to say,
right.
We have and then the things you say out loud.
It's Dvarim Shepikdusha, exactly, not silent Amida. For example, somebody davening Nusach Sfarad can still start Zukei Zimra with Hodu, and and not say and say Baruch Sha'amar later on like they do in Nusach Sfarad and vice versa. But the thing, Kedusha you should answer based on the minhag. But also, Reb Leo told me when he was saying Kaddish, even in Mizrachi, he would never say Yatzlach Kol Kamech. He said, "Who am I to impose my minhagim on the shul?" And I thought that was I was discussing with him in Torah about a few things, and he brought that as an example. I thought it was a very admirable thing to say, and humble as well. Kedar Kol B'Kodesh.
So Rabbi, does that mean like if you go and you're davening in and you don't know what the Kedusha is, you should actually have 2 Siddurim?
Yeah, or learn it. It's like I remember in the Gush first, because they used to do Keter in Musaf, and I grew up in England. In London, no one does Sfarad. It's like one shul. No, there's not. I heard of Hasidim before I came to Melbourne. Right, everyone's Yekish and no one does Sfarad in London almost. And I didn't know Keter when I was an 18-year-old to Israel. Sorry.
N16 they do.
Okay, Northwest London. Okay, I amend my comments. So that was it was. But yeah, I remember I had like a separate siddur. But yeah, if you're davening certainly b'kviyot in the community, you should be saying the Kedusha with them. This is the psak of Rav Moshe Feinstein, but I think it's quite a general psak. Rav Avadia, Kedar Kol Kodesh, didn't hold this way. The Sfardim. He said Sfardim Edutam Mizrach. Their Kedusha is really the proper Kedusha, and therefore he held that they should, even when it's classic Rav Avadia, the Sfarad is Edutam Mizrach is the right way, and therefore Barur Shalom Shanim Ashkenazim. If you're davening a Sfaradi shul, we've got to change, right? But it doesn't work both ways. That's what Rav Avadia has a long shiur about it. I think they quote it here. Yeah, they quote it here. Rav Avadia Yosef writes that Sfaradim should recite their own nusach even for Kedusha, despite them using different nusach. That's Maran for you. There's a reason they called him Maran, Okay, so that's what he holds. Okay, So, but Rosh Feinstein and what I would recommend is that when you go to another shul, you should be reciting Devar Shebekdusha according to that. I mean, what I said, one exception I would note to it is in Israel, it seems that the common practice has been everywhere that because Israel is, a shalom pot in that regard, that when it comes to people saying Kaddish Yatom, Avelim will still say the Kaddish of their own minhag and they wait for each other. So, there'll be a pause and then people down in the Sfarad, Edith and Mizrach will say, and there is, and also at the end, Yehei Shlam Rabba, when the Sfaradim have, not Sfaradim, but Edith and Mizrach have the extended, Chaim Savad, right? So it's usually it's become accepted that people do wait. So Kaddish is an exception to that. But Kedusha is different because Kedusha is everyone davening together, which is what we're more familiar for. So the penultimate line of Sfaradi Kaddish is, and also Kaddish Drabanan, it's shorter. It's shorter. They have like a shortcut in there. Yeah. Their Kaddish Drabanan is actually slightly shorter than the middle paragraph than ours, but they make up for it in the penultimate one in Yehei Shlama. So, but that seems to be an exception. But again, I think it's different because it's the person who's reciting Kaddish as opposed to the Tzurba's response. The Tzurba's response should be unified, and that's what Rav Vajra rules. Okay. So what about somebody who's already still in their silent Amida? Somebody who is in their silent Amida, obviously you're not allowed to, unless you're past the Yurat Son, you can't respond to Kedusha. But what do you do? So you're supposed to stand silently. And this is all based on a big machlok at Rashi and Tosfot, which we'll discuss in Masechet Sukkah. So if we go to page 280, the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah discusses Hallel. And the Gemara there says that you don't have to say the entirety of Hallel yourself, or the minhag was in those days that the Chazan would say certain words and then the community would respond the other half of the pasuk, but it would be Shomer Ka'oneh and you say the first half. So the Gemara here in Sukkah Lamed Chet says, Hu Omer, the Chazan would say Baruch Haba, the Hein Omrim, and the community would repeat B'Shem Hashem. Says the Gemara, Mekan L'Shomer Ka'oneh. They said half a pasuk each. You see, Shomer Ka'oneh works. By the way, I think this is a good chance for Musar, because for all of us, that often in Hodu, Lashem Kitov, people rely on this, right? Because in Hodu, in Hallel, we say Hodu and then Yomar and Yomru and Yomru. But people don't often say the next line. So they just say, we, the community, say Hodu 4 times, but we don't actually repeat Yomar Yisrael, Yomar. So how does that work? So it's based on the premise of Shomer Ka'oneh. Nafkamina being that if the Chazan starts the next line and everyone else is still going Hodu Lashem Kitovki, and then he already moves on to Yomana Yisrael, if you don't hear the Chazan say Yomana Yisrael because everyone is at the same time saying Hodu, then you have to say yourself Yomana Yisrael. If you look often in the art scroll Machzorim, they just put it in automatically that you should say the next line ahead of the Chazan. This is most pertinent, I think, and most relevant on Sukkot, because everyone is shaking lulav at their own speed, and you're still in the first Hodu, and the Chazan's already in Yomana Yirei Hashem. But it's very important that if you don't hear the next line, every single word of the next line from the Chazan, you have to then say that line yourself. So before you repeat Hodu. So if you miss him saying Yomana Yirei Hashem, then you have to say Yomana Yirei Hashem. Because there's no mechanism of Shomer Ka'oneh if you can't hear him, because everyone's still making noise with their lulavim.
But we put it into the tune so that you've got that.
You think everyone? I'm sorry, my experience of Sukkot was not everyone singing any shul, but everyone singing it in the unified speed. You have to make sure that you. I have to say. The Seder. Okay, so but either way, that was a side point, but about Shomer Ka'oneh. But the Gemara in Sukkah says that there's an idea of Shomer Ka'oneh. The Chazan says part of it, you hear it, you're Yotzeh, and you say the rest. Rashi there explains this is an important principle for Kedusha as well. And he says there that we see from here fundamentally that you can listen to the Chazan and be Yotzeh as if you've said the words yourself. Or we'll skip it source 16 to the second paragraph. He extrapolates this to our case of Kedusha when somebody is still in their silent Amida. So second paragraph of source 16 says Rashi there. And it's the same limit palim but tzibur. If you're davening your Amida, v'shliach tzibur omer kaddish or yehei shmei rabba. If you're still davening Amida and then the shliach says kaddish, Yishtaku b'tfilatan, you should be quiet where you are. V'yishma'u b'chavana b'harehen ka'onin. You should be quiet and listen as if you yourself have said it. Okay, so when he completes Kedusha, then you continue where you are. So let's say you stop at where you are, you listen to Kedusha silently, you're not allowed to respond. And then once he finishes Kedusha, then you go back. And he says this is also brought by the Bahag, the Bahalachot Gedolot. However, Tosfot disagree with Rashi. What's Tosfot's issue? Tosfot say if you're silent, if you stop your Amida to hear the Kedusha silently, because it's as if you're saying it, what's the problem? It's as if you've now recited Kedusha smack bang in the middle of your Amida, and that's a hefsek. Because if we really believe in the principle of Shomer Ka'oneh, it is argues Tosfot, it's as if you've recited Kedusha in the middle of your Amida as a hefsek. So they disagree. If we look at source 17, Tosfot there are cholek on Rashi. He brings Rabbeinu Tam and the Ri. In source 17, Rabbeinu Tam v'Ri hayu omrim. They would say the Adarabba. On the contrary, Ishomer Ka'oneh have hefsekaim shotek. If you're silent for the duration of the to listen to the Kedusha, it's as if you've recited it in the middle of your Amida, and that's a hefsek. But they concede that even though they don't like it, that's the min. Ultimately, the minhag prevails, but they don't like it. They don't like Rashi and they don't like the minhag, but they concede that is the minhag. So what do we do lahalacha? So Rabbeinu Yonah, firstly, a generation later, it's interesting to note, holds that I don't know how to paskin. You've got Rashi on the one hand, you've got his grandson Rabbeinu Tam, and also the Ri on the other hand. I don't know how to paskin. He said both minhagim are legitimate. Those who stop to hear the Amida, to hear the Kedusha, and those who just don't stop but continue davening in parallel anyway. He says in the bold there in source 18, the Avid Kamar Avid, the Avid Kamar Avid. Both opinions are legitimate. You do this way, it's okay. You do this way, it's okay. That's what Rabbeinu Yonah said. The Shulchan Aruch, however, was machriya. The Shulchan Aruch paskened like Rashi. If you are in your silent Amida and they get to Kedusha, you stop and you listen silently like Rashi. In source 19 there, says the Shulchan Aruch, Eino posek lekadish v'lo lekdusha. You don't pause to answer Kaddish or Kedusha in the middle of your Amida. Ella yishtop, but you're silent. V'yechaven lamash omesh le'chzibur v'yehei ka'oneh. And you listen to the words of the Chazan without saying anything. It's as if you yourself have recited it. The Mishnah Berurah says it's as if you have recited it, but it's not considered a hefsek. Says the Mishnah Berurah there, source 20. V'yeh ka'oneh, it's as if you've answered. Le'inyan sheyatzah b'zeh yedei chiyuv Kaddish v'Kedusha. By you being silent in your Amida and listening, it's as if you yourself have fulfilled the obligation of Kedusha or Kaddish. Nonetheless, lo chashiv hefsek, and it's not a problem of being an interruption, and that is the general practice. Okay, so that is about pausing. What he didn't discuss, which we only got a couple of minutes, maybe I'll add it because it's important. Somebody who's still in the Amida, I think we discussed it very briefly, but just in case we didn't, if you're still in the Amida, so you can't answer Kedusha. However, if you are after the first Yehulah Sonim Reifi, after Hamvarechet Mo Yisrael Bashal, after the bracha of Sim Shalom Shalom Rav, it says in small in Siddurim, because the Mishnah Berurah had to add it, Yehulah Sonim Reifi at the first time, right? Yeah. And then there's Elokai Netzuru. If you said that first Yehulah Son, then you can answer limited things. You can answer the line Kadosh Kadosh Kadosh, and you can answer the line
Baruch Shem.
Baruch Kavod Hashem. Yeah, you can answer. According to most people, that you cannot answer Yimloch. It's machloket. You can answer Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah, and you can answer the Amen of Hakel Hakadosh and the Amen of Shema Kolenu, and you can answer the Amen of Da'amiram Ba'alma V'Ibru Amen and Baruch. And you can say the first three words Modim Anach Lach, but you can't say the rest of Modim Rabbana. I think that's all of them. Takes practice to remember. But so those are the exceptions. So if you were after the first Yehulah Son and you're in, let's say, Elokai Netzuru, you could ask Kadosh Kadosh and Baruch Kavod and the Amen of Hakel HaKadosh, and then you continue. Sorry, daven faster or slower, there's less to remember. Right, exactly. I certainly wouldn't hurry. Like an Elokai Netzuru, maybe I'd hurry, but if I was in Sim Shalom, I wouldn't rush the bracha to answer Kedusha. It depends on the person and obviously who you are. Okay, so we've got a few minutes just to go a bit further. There's no late Marav, so we'll go a bit just for a couple more minutes. So the Rosh talks now just about the correct conduct of davening. And we discussed this in the past, but he talks about the number of people who need to respond. So again, even though the minhag doesn't seem to be this way, we saw some machlokas in the Magen Avraham and the Magen Avraham versus the Shulchan Aruch Harab. But if you need 9 people to answer, or if it's enough to have 5 plus the chazan, right? For Chazar to Shatz, but the Rosh was machmir, and he says in bold in source 21, says the Rosh, if there aren't 9 people answering, it's like a bracha in vain. And therefore, the Rosh rules really, you should really have 9 people answering, the chazan plus 9 others. And we discussed this previously, though, that the Shulchan Aruch does bring it halacha in source 22, that you have to have 9 people, but there was a stira there. We saw a contradiction, and therefore we're not going to go into it inside now. But there is an importance that we answer amen, and therefore the Mishnah Berurah says here in source 23 that you shouldn't talk, you shouldn't really be doing other things during repetition. The Mishnah Berurah held really that, in his opinion, people should not learn during the repetition, even shouldn't be learning Torah either. I might have a word about that. But in source 23, the Mishnah Berurah says, one should be careful not to be saying other things, like going ahead and saying tachanun during the repetition, or to learn Torah during the repetition. But even if you know you're making sure that you're going to answer amen kara'oi as appropriate, amen yutoma, it's not really right to do this, says the Mishnah Berurah. Because even if learned people learn during the repetition, other people will learn from them. They'll say, so the rabbi's learning, so I don't have to listen either, right? But they won't be learning Daf Yomi during the repetition. They'll be, on WhatsApp. We shouldn't make sure that we cause other people to sin. They bring here over the page in the name of Chaim Kanievsky that somebody who does Shnai Mikra ve'echad Targum during repetition, it's so bad that they don't fulfill their obligation because it's a mitzvah b'abat aveira. So it says in source 24, therefore, im koresh Shnai Mikra ve'echad Targum b'chazar tashatz katav hagrach Kanievsky the efshar da afilu b'di'avad lo yatzeh dechova. You haven't fulfilled your obligation of doing Shnai Mikra to have a mitzvah b'abat aveira, because it's a mitzvah b'abat aveira, because you're doing an aveira by learning or during repetition when you should be listening, and therefore he's not happy. However, that's what the Sefer says. The minhag in yeshivot is, if you look around, or in many places, is that people learn. People that not allowed to talk. I don't think anyone allows you to talk during Chazar Tashatz if it's not relevant to the tefillah. But people learn. And people do learn, especially in yeshivot and learning communities. Many rabbanim learn during Chazar Tashatz. And I asked Rav Lichtenstein Zatzal about it, because in yeshiva it's something which bothered me. And Rav Aaron said to me, Bismano, he said that it depends what what that person is doing. If it's somebody who's learning and makes efficient use of their time, then and this is their time to learn, or to chop an extra little bit of learning in, then maybe that's okay. But if it's somebody who's on holiday and they've done nothing all day, and now is their 5 minutes to do a bit of learning during the repetition, then that's not good. Which basically sort of put perspective in terms of the person and knowing oneself and what they did that day, and whether it really justifies using these 2 minutes instead of listening to amen, and the importance of the Mila. We saw that, especially as the way Rav Soloveitchik explained it, of this being tefillah had tzibur, whether now is the appropriate time for tefillah, and I suppose will depend on one's circumstances. So if the poskim are charich about it, but the minhag in yeshivot is that many people and rabbanim do learn Torah, but are careful to always answer amen. I will say about Rav Lichtenstein itself, he used to learn always during Chazar Tashatz, but he was also always the first one to catch out the shliach tzibur if he made a mistake. He would always, so he'd be engrossed in his Gemara, but I'd see it with my own eyes, he'd instantly be the first one to shout out so he was able to lirkod b'shtei chatunot, as they say, and we'll end and he would have his cake and eat it, like so.
Yeah.
Okay, and we will end the shiur there. It's good to be back. Same time next week.
Shkoyach.
Rochim to you. Erev Tov.
Erev Tov. Bye.